an essay for the test. So ACT writing test, ACT essay test, same thing. We'll talk about why do some students not score well on the ACT writing test, what does the ACT writing test test, what a typical essay prompt or the directions look like, and then what you need to do to succeed on the ACT writing test. After that, Jen and I will answer your questions. First and foremost, why is the ACT writing test important? Well, it's an optional part of the ACT test. However, if you take the writing test, you'll get an additional score that adds to what colleges will receive, giving you a complete English language arts score. They'll be able to see your writing in addition to how well you know the content of English and reading. So it's important to complete that ELA score. Some colleges, some universities don't require that you take the test. You can check with ACT whether a certain college requires it, but it's always good to be prepared just in case. Anyone is capable of scoring well on this writing test. So you might not be an English major, it might not be your favorite subject. Writing might be a little scary to you, but not to worry. Anyone can do well on this test as long as you know how. Why do some students not score well on this test? First of all, it's fatigue. The ACT with the writing test is 3 to 3.5 hours long. You can only take the writing test at the very end. So if writing is not your strongest point, if you know you struggle with writing an essay, or if you just get tired after that many hours of answering multiple choice questions, then it's easy to not score well on the test. Also, this, like the other parts of the ACT, is a very fast-paced test. You're given 40 minutes to read the directions, assess the issue in 3 different perspectives, plan your response, and then write your essay. So that's not a lot of time to do all of that, especially if you're tired. The last thing that contributes to students not doing well on this part of the test is improper preparation. If you're writing and writing and writing, preparing to take this test, that's good. However, if you're not getting feedback on what you're writing, particularly from someone familiar with this test and aware of what the test is asking of you, then you might just be repeating and cementing your mistakes. So practicing in the wrong way makes the end result not very good. Practicing with feedback and practicing better and better and better gives an end result that's better. So let's look at an essay that was written for this test that scored the lowest possible score. So you can't get any lower of a score than 1 or 2 with 2 readers reading and scoring your essay. When we look at this example, notice how many paragraphs the student used and ask yourself, is this even technically an essay? This was the prompt that the student was referring to. Very briefly, the topic was free music. It was about whether or not music in the digital age is valuable as it was prior to so many different kinds of music being available. The 3 different perspectives gives 1 for free music, 1 against free music, and 1 sort of in between. That's what the typical directions look like. This is our example. So in these 3 sentences, this student responded. You can see that he or she sided with one of the perspectives, cited some of the reasons why that perspective was the way it was, And in this last sentence, it's not entirely clear what the student means, but it seems like they're getting to a point there. However, when we look at the comments, so I won't make you read all of these explanations, but in essence, the explanation is just that this student tried to rearrange the wording of what was in the directions. So that's not the skill in writing that they're looking for. For each of the 4 different grading criteria, the different domains that you're scored on for this essay, each one of them essentially is that it's not, the response wasn't acceptable. The writer's intentions were hard to discern, it's unclear, it has no organization, and it doesn't communicate the way that the essay is expected to communicate. Now let's take a look at what an essay that scored a perfect score, so 6 for one essay times those 2 readers, a perfect 12. Again, take a look at how many paragraphs are in this example. And as you're skimming it, it's going to take up the entire screen. I wanted to give you the entire essay in one slide, so you don't have to read the whole thing, but there are additional writing skills that are taught in this course that you can use in your essay as the student did. So for example, summary, paraphrasing, using anecdotes or little stories, and that's what the student did to obtain a perfect score. So this example isn't handwritten, it's clearly typed out, but many different paragraphs, many more paragraphs. This example is not about free music, it's about extending high school from the current time to an additional hour or additional days. And when we kind of highlight some of the more important parts of the essay, you can see there's a very clear perspective, and each of the body paragraphs are mentioned as the student proposes their thesis, and then what's coming in later on in the essay is mentioned right at the beginning in that introduction. The structure of the body paragraphs follows what's mentioned, the cost in the first body paragraph, the motivation, second body paragraph, motivation. Third body paragraph talks about stress. So the student's communication is clear and follows what the student initially sets out to do. The last paragraph further demonstrates and gives examples of why the student's perspective is reasonable, why the readers should agree with the student. And in the conclusion, the main point, the student's perspective, is again repeated, and a final point is made to leave the readers with something else to think about. This example scored a perfect 6 from both readers because, again, with ideas and analysis, the development and support, organization and language, the 4 domains that this test tests, all of them were exemplary. They were clear and argumentative. So what does the ACT writing test test? When we looked at our examples, both the example of the lowest possible scoring essay response and the highest possible essay scoring response, we can see a little bit about what goes on in this test, what it tests. Specifically, this test is a preparation for college, obviously part of the ACT. As such, colleges want to know that you, as an incoming college student, can think for yourself. That's what college is all about. It's about taking what you've learned already and applying it to new situations in new ways. So forming your own perspective is essential. You need to be able to assess 3 other perspectives, one of which, or possibly 2 or all of them, you somewhat agree with, but ultimately come up with your own perspective and support that with strong ideas, analyzing those different perspectives, developing your idea, and having clear and good organization and language use. Ideas and analysis, again, what is that? That simply means that you've thought about the issue. You've thought about not only what's presented in the background information and the different perspectives, but added some ideas of your own. You've developed and supported your ideas both by using points from the given perspectives and new ideas and examples that support your perspective. Again, organizing an essay is essential. Having more than one paragraph, having that introduction that leads clearly into the body paragraphs and clearly out of the body paragraphs into the conclusion. Essential for essay writing. There's a lot of critical thinking skills that go into organizing an essay. And finally, that last but very important piece, language use and conventions. How is your grammar? What is your spelling like? How is your punctuation and capitalization? Some students consider this to be the least, they're least happy about studying grammar, punctuation, spelling, but these are like road signs. One of the things that I love pointing out to my students is if you have a point you want to get across to your readers, you need the path to be clear for that point to get across. If your spelling, if your capitalization or punctuation gets in the way of or stops your reader and makes them wonder what you're trying to tell them, those are essentially roadblocks or misleading traffic signs. When your punctuation, capitalization, grammar, and so forth are helpful and standardized, then it's like having a smooth passage and your point really gets across. So this also is stressed in the class. In other words, you need to have your own perspective showing independent thought, developed and supported with reasoning and example, organized well, and communicated effectively. This course addresses all of these requirements so that you too can score a perfect 12. A typical essay prompt looks something like this. Each essay begins with these general directions. You can see, again, these points expecting your own perspective, developed and supported, organized, communicated clearly. Those appear at the beginning of every essay. Then you're given something like this. Again, a topic or an issue, in this case, free education. What does that mean? You're given some background information that helps us understand more about what that means. You're told to read and carefully consider 3 different perspectives. You'll always have 3 perspectives on every ACT writing test. You're given the prompt also to consider a little bit more about free college education. So we get a clarification that it's not free education across the board that this issue is about. It's free college education. Each of the 3 perspectives, again, one is going to be for free college education, one is going to be in the middle, and then one is going to be against free college education. In this course, you're taught specific step-by-step processes so that you can succeed on the ACT writing test. First and foremost is a test-taking strategy. Again, you have 40 minutes. How do you cram in understanding an issue, reading that background information, thinking about those 3 different perspectives, coming up with your own perspective, and then writing into those 40 minutes. It starts by pre-writing or essentially brainstorming. You'll have blank space in your text booklet where you can write precisely onto the directions. You can circle things and cross out things in the different perspectives, and it's going to end up looking something like this. So here's our prompt again. We're going to focus just on that background information and think about what is it telling us and try to kind of paraphrase it in our own words. When we do that, certain key points of that background information jump right out at us, and we can use our pencils in the test booklet to find out what's most important to us and consider the pros and cons of the issue. Then we're going to focus on those 3 perspectives, consider what each perspective is arguing, and think about the pros and cons of each perspective. That looks something like this. We find out that perspective 1 in this case is against offering free college education. Their reasons, we can briefly paraphrase or summarize underneath that summary of what that perspective is all about. Same thing with perspective 2. Perspective 2 is between offering something like free and paid college education. Their points are that education needs to be equally accessible and of high quality for all, and then that students who want that education will find a way to pay for it. Perspective 3 is the last option. They are for offering free college education, and their reasons we've listed below. The next step, let me go forward there. The next step is to think about the pros and cons of each of those given perspectives. So here I've listed some of the pros and also some of the cons from that first perspective that is against offering free college education, pros and cons for the perspective in between offering free and paid college education, pros and cons for the perspective that's for offering free education. Finally, we need to show that we're thinking for ourselves. So let's say that you as a student taking this test, you've made some notes in your test booklet. You've outlined what the perspectives are arguing and pros and cons for each perspective. Now, all of that background information, all of that brainstorming has given you the idea that maybe free education is not a good idea, but also not private education. Perhaps the government should subsidize and something like a work study, and that becomes your own perspective, just hypothetically. You're going to think about the evidence that supports your perspective. Some of this will come from the given perspectives, and then other evidence that supports your perspective will be new examples that you think of or that are from your own experience or studies. Same thing, you'll want to consider the evidence opposing your perspective, weighing what supports your own perspective and what opposes your perspective will make your essay even stronger. And both of the evidence opposing your perspective comes from the given perspectives. It seems like it's a lot when we run over it and I show all of the steps back to back. But with practice, starting off slowly, starting off reviewing and strengthening your writing skills as you summarize, as you think of examples from your own life, as you think of ways that you can improve your writing and get feedback on your writing so that you can improve, starting off slowly and building up to learning all of the steps and then practicing them so that they become automatic. When you get into that 40-minute session and you're tired after the 3 to 3.5 hours. You're almost done with your ACT test. You're going to sit down to take your ACT writing test and feel confident that you can relax. You know the steps. You're ready to succeed and write a good essay. Each week in this course, I'll be giving you feedback on your writing to help your writing improve. You'll also get feedback from your peers. Sometimes students learn a lot from reading the work and seeing how other students are improving their writing. Then you can use how they are improving to help you improve as well. So if it's seemed like a lot that I've thrown at you in this brief time outlining what this course is all about, here are 2 key takeaways. Most important to remember: the writing test on the ACT is much more complicated than your average high school essay assignment. So you want to develop a test taking strategy and receive feedback about your writing to improve, so that you can succeed on the test. This is an 8-week course beginning on October 7th, I believe, and running through the 2nd of December. So 10/7 through 12/2. It's on Saturday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will be teaching this course. I'm going to pass it back to June, and we'll answer any of your questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. I do have the questions, okay?
Okay, great.
One of the students asked, semicolons are always very confusing for me. How or when do you use them normally?
Semicolons are right in between the full stop of a period or other exclamation mark that ends a sentence and no punctuation at all. So it's kind of like if you imagine taking a breath, the thought that comes after the semicolon needs to be something that either gives an example, maybe it's a list of things. You want to put a semicolon after you've just described something in general, and you're going to put after the semicolon specific examples of that general idea. Or it could be something that follows naturally, so that it's too close of an idea to put a full stop. You want to keep the flow going so that your readers understand that this next point is related to the phrase or the clause that precedes the semicolon. So for instance, many writers will put semicolon and the word however, because they're showing something that contradicts, but it's very closely related to the idea presented right before that semicolon. So if my best advice on the fly like this is that if your ideas in your sentence before and after the semicolon are far enough that you can put a full stop, a period, or some other punctuation mark, then do that. If they're too closely related, or for stylistic reasons, you want to keep your sentence flowing, then put the semicolon and complete your thought. Just make sure that those ideas are really closely related.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And
Sure.
here's one more question. Question is talk about it. So that argument taken in an essay cannot be the same as one of the given perspectives? The argument taken in an essay cannot be the same as one of the given perspectives?
You can agree with one of the given perspectives, but you still need to show how the other perspectives compare to the perspective that you agree with, and you need to give a complete analysis of why you agree with it. It's not enough to say that you agree with it and everything in it is exactly what you would think. you need to show why, and then compare that to the other perspectives also, why you don't think that it is those other perspectives. So you can answer the question, you can still score perfectly on this essay question if you agree with one of the perspectives, but it's not enough just to agree. You need to give a full picture of why that is your thought, independent.
Thank you. And one more question. How formal is the essay? Are the words like I or you allowed it, or should we like for a more serious tone, approach for a more serious tone?
Having a narrative approach is controversial. If you want to use I in part of this essay, let's say you have a personal example from your personal life, something that is the best example that you can think of to support a perspective that you hold, or your unique perspective on the issue, then in one paragraph, it would be all right for you to use the narrative voice, that personal pronoun I, my, me. But for the entire essay, it would not, a purely narrative tone for this essay is not appropriate, because you want to be kind of like the news broadcaster or the newspaper writer or the news article writer online. If a reporter was to tell us just what they experienced and everything that they felt in an instant, that might be interesting for a moment. But what we're really interested in is kind of a more persuasive tone, where we are shown multiple perspectives. We're given the facts as well as something that is just subjective to that one individual. So you want to have a more argumentative tone, and in that way you'll persuade your readers more than if you were just talking like you would talk to a best friend. This is something I did, this is my opinion on that. I'll talk more about that in the class, because that is a very important point.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
My
And
pleasure.
then one more question. When you say that a personal example is the best example that you can think of, are you implying that personal examples are second or some other type of support? If so, what will be that better support?
Okay, let me take the free music prompt and answer your question with that prompt. Many of us in the digital age, we knew kind of what it was like to have music only available on the vinyl records, or later on compact discs, and before that, cassette tapes. We have an understanding of what it was like to get music that way. And those technologies were developed, of course, after music was available only live. You would only hear music if you had historically, if you had the musician live and present with you. However, with these new developing technology, our distance to the live music, our distance to the music being created, and that kind of energy, in addition to the music, but the energy that the musicians have, the passion that you can see when you see them playing, and that is unique to that experience of being somewhere where music is being performed live. We keep getting more and more distant from that experience, and musicians have to adapt to that as well. So in the digital age, it's become even more difficult, because musicians aren't paid as much as they were when there was an easier way to track exactly how many people were listening to their music, how many albums they were selling. In the digital age, music can be recorded and shared, and it's a lot more complicated to think about who owns this music. If it's something that I can just stream through Pandora or or get online for free. Why should I have to pay for it? So what I've just given you are historical examples from times that I didn't live in and you didn't live in. I've given you technical examples or commercial examples, things having to do with economics, not personal to me. If I was to talk about a personal example, I would be limited just to my own experience with music. Now, maybe I'm a musician myself, and I tried to sell music through a traditional music company, but it was instead put on one of the free music websites, and I didn't find any royalties from it. In that case, my personal example would be immediately relevant to my response on the essay. But it's unlikely that many of us have had that experience of being professional musicians and going through the process of being seeing that side of the coin, so to speak, and having that perspective. Does that help? I hope.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, if you have more questions, you can just call us and call us or just quote a number and to ask more about the question. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So is there any more question? And let's see. Could you possibly send me the earlier half? Okay. All right. So yeah, I just recorded the whole section. If you want to listen again, so please contact us. So either you can email us or I think one letter missed in your slides is www.7edu.org. O-R-G.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Michelle, for your time, and thank you everybody for your time. And okay, so this is for today's class, and if you have more questions, please contact us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.